hablas. Hablas is you speak or you talk. Hablas, like blah blah. Hablas, you speak, you talk. Estudias, you study. Aprendes, you learn. Vives, you live. And then esto, this, and aquí, here. So we've got 4 you verbs: hablas, estudias, aprendes, and vives. Okay, how would you say you speak Spanish? You speak Spanish. What would that be? Hablas español. Hablas español. And you could just say, you speak Spanish, don't you? Little question at the end. And in Spanish, you do that by just saying no at the end. ¿Hablas español, no? ¿Hablas español, no? You speak Spanish, don't you? How would you say, you study Spanish, don't you? What would that be? ¿Estudias español, no? ¿Estudias español, no? How about, you live here, don't you? You live here, don't you? What would that be? ¿Vives aquí, no? ¿Vives aquí, no? And how would you say, you learn this? You learn this. What would that be? Aprendes esto. Aprendes esto. Okay, so that was just to get us started with you. Now, what about if you wanted to say, unless you, whatever it might be, unless you speak Spanish, unless you study Spanish, unless you live here, unless is a menos que, a menos que, and menos is less. So it's easy to remember, a menos que, unless, a menos que. So if we want to say, unless you speak Spanish, ... whatever the sentence might be, we'd say, a menos que, and then you speak Spanish. But after unless, it's always a subjunctive in Spanish. So it's an automatic trigger for the subjunctive when you use the word unless, a menos que. So let's just change our verbs down at the bottom to subjunctive you. And it's fairly straightforward. All we do is we swap around the endings. So the ones that end in as, they change to es, and the ones that end in es change to as. Now we could do a big long grammatical explanation, but this is all we need for the moment. So hablas is going to go to hables. Estudias, estudies. And then the other ones, the other two, are going to swap to the as. So it will be aprendas and vivas. So those are now our subjunctive you. We just swap them around. So, how would you say, unless you speak Spanish? What would that be? Unless you speak Spanish. A menos que hables español. A menos que hables español. And to be able to make a full sentence, let's just put something at the beginning which we can use with all of our sentences. So we're just going to put, it won't be possible. No será posible. No será posible. It won't be possible. So we'll just start all of our sentences with this, because then we can say, it won't be possible unless you do this. So just an easy way to practice full sentences with this. So, no será posible. It won't be possible unless you speak Spanish. So what would that be? It won't be possible unless you speak Spanish. No será posible a menos que hables español. No será posible a menos que hables español. How would you say, it won't be possible unless you study this? It won't be possible unless you study this. What would that be? No será posible a menos que estudies esto. No será posible a menos que estudies esto. How about, it won't be possible unless you live in Spain. It won't be possible unless you live in Spain. What would that be? No será posible a menos que vivas en España. No será posible a menos que vivas en España. Now let's just add another word for unless, because as well as a menos que, there is another very, very common way of saying unless in Spanish, and it would be useful to be able to understand this. And the phrase is just a no ser que. A no ser que is another way of saying unless, and just like a menos que, it always triggers the subjunctive. So a no ser que. So let's try a few sentences with that version of unless. How would you say, it won't be possible unless you learn Spanish? It won't be possible unless you learn Spanish. What would that be? No será posible a no ser que aprendas español. No será posible a no ser que aprendas español. How about, it won't be possible unless you study here. It won't be possible unless you study here. What would that be? No será posible a no ser que estudies aquí. No será posible a no ser que estudies aquí. And as you may expect, the present subjunctive has some irregular verbs, some irregular endings. And we're going to look at a group that's easy to remember, because this group is based around all the verbs that in the present I end in go. So you may have heard of go verbs. So for example, I have is tengo, ends in go, G-O. I come, vengo. I put, pongo. I go out, salgo. I do, hago. They all end in go. Now these go verbs, in the present subjunctive you, they all end in gas. So just think of gas. They end in gas. Gas. G-A-S. So the you subjunctive for come, or we think I come is vengo. It's one of those go verbs. And for you, present subjunctive ends in gas. So it's vengas. Vengas. So you come subjunctive is vengas. What do you think it would be for you have present subjunctive? Well, I have is tengo. So we know it's a go verb. So it's going to be gas at the end. So tengas. Tengas. You have present subjunctive. What about you go out? What would that be? Well, I go out is salgo. It's a go verb. So you go out, present subjunctive, salgas. And you put pongas, and you do hagas. Okay, so they all end in gas. Okay, so how would you say, it won't be possible unless you come here? It won't be possible unless you come here. What would that be? No será posible a no ser que vengas aquí. Or it could be a menos que vengas aquí. So again, no será posible a no ser que vengas aquí. It won't be possible unless you come here. How about, it won't be possible unless you have this. It won't be possible unless you have this. What would that be? No será posible a menos que tengas esto. No será posible a menos que tengas esto. And how about, it won't be possible unless you do this. It won't be possible unless you do this. What would that be? No será posible a menos que hagas esto. No será posible a menos que hagas esto. And how about, it won't be possible unless you go out with Maria. It won't be possible unless you go out with Maria. And the word for with is just con, C-O-N. So what would that be? No será posible a menos que salgas con María. No será posible a menos que salgas con María. So, unless, a menos que, or a no ser que, plus the you subjunctive. If we want to say as long as in, as long as you do this, there's no problem. Or you can stay as long as you do the cooking, whatever it might be. To say as long as, the phrase is con tal de que. So just remember that as a piece of vocabulary. Con tal de que, and then whatever follows. So as long as, con tal de que, you arrive on time, for example. Okay, so as long as, con tal de que. And just like unless, it's always followed by the subjunctive. So as long as, con tal de que, is always followed by the subjunctive. So how would we say, as long as you speak Spanish? As long as you speak Spanish, what would that be? Con tal de que hables español. Con tal de que hables español. As long as you speak Spanish. How about, as long as you come here? What would that be? As long as you come here. Con tal de que vengas aquí. Con tal de que vengas aquí. As long as you come here. How about, it will be possible as long as you do this. It will be possible as long as you do this. What would that be? Será posible con tal de que hagas esto. Será posible con tal de que hagas esto. And how about, it will be possible as long as you live in Madrid. It'll be possible as long as you live in Madrid. What would that be? Será posible con tal de que vivas en Madrid. Será posible con tal de que vivas en Madrid.